Hey everybody, it's Anthony Conklin. Welcome back to the Anthony Conklin Show, where we help entrepreneurs connect their passion, purpose, and why. I'm super excited to have on our show today sales and marketing expert and strategist. His name is David MEERMAN Scott. He's the author or co-author of 10 books. 3 of those books are international bestsellers. I'm a huge fan of the new rules of marketing and PR. I love the term newsjacking. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I think I've used that 100 times. He's an international speaker. He's also a speaker for Tony Robbins' Business Mastery. And we're going to talk a lot about how entrepreneurs can turn their fans into customers and their customers into fans. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome David MEERMAN Scott. David, so happy that you're here, brother. How you doing?
Anthony, great to be here, my friend. Thank you very, very much for having me on.
So listen, I know you have a short period of time. I just want to get to a couple of things. I want to just share with our audience that, David is, again, he's not just a speaker, an author. I mean, he's really all about helping to kind of marry customers with fans on his book, Fanocracy. But I want to just kind of take a step back a little bit. Let's talk about, who David is. Let's find out where he came from. So how'd you go from this BA in economics on Wall Street to a marketing and sales expert? Kind of what attracted you to do marketing?
Crazy, right? So I was on Wall Street. I was on a bond trading desk. I hated it. I was terrible at it, but I loved the information. I loved what was going on the screens. So I worked for companies like Dow Jones and Reuters as sales and marketing. And most recently, I was with a division of Thomson Reuters, and they fired me back in 2002. So that's what put me into my own business, because I recognized that my background in financial information meant that I understood how the web works, how internet marketing works, how information drives people to action, and how entrepreneurs can use online information to develop their marketing and to develop fans. And so for the last 17 years, I've been happily unemployed. And I've, as you said, I've written a bunch of books. And the real books have been really about how entrepreneurs can take charge of their own marketing rather than just spending a boatload of money on advertising.
Right. I think one of the things that, you talk about marketing, David, and I want to focus on that for a minute. I think marketing is sort of been reborn over the past few years, with social media. I mean, I know I started on this Blab platform back in 2015.
Yes, right. I remember that platform.
Facebook. Yeah. But I think in my mind, marketing has kind of changed faces, to the entrepreneur. Marketing has kind of had this new veil. But what's the biggest misconception about marketing today that what you're trying to do is kind of set the record straight for fans?
Well, for more than a decade, I kept saying that you need to stop spending money on advertising and instead create content. But I've actually changed my mind, because over the last years, people have been doubling down on creating content on the web, but in a way that is not effective. They'll create an email newsletter, but they'll send you like 3 emails a day. They'll be on social networks, and instead of providing value, they'll try to sell you something on social networks. Right. And the social networks themselves have been a problem because they're so polarizing. They're trying to get you into a tribe, and then and when you get in there, then they only send you certain information. And politically, it's on the web, it's really, really polarizing. So I think the pendulum has swung too far in the direction of superficial online communications at a time when people are hungry for a true human connection. So I think the pendulum is swinging back, right? We're entering a brand new decade, the decade of the 20s. And as we enter the decade of the 20s, I'm strongly convinced that all of us are looking for true human connection. We're looking for people to do business with. Right. We're looking for people who are part of our tribe. We're looking for people who can be part of the fan group we're on, or we can create fans of what we do.
So how do we do that? So I mean, because I think, you and I, come from a similar generation where it's, you get the deal done, always be closing.
Yeah.
Marketing is different from sales. And now I guess we're using sort of the human touch, using the personality side of it. And I think the fear of doing that, David, is you become more of a, he's a business development guy, he just wants to be my friend. And do you really want to get deals done? But help me understand how fans, because I want to talk about Fanocracy.
Sure.
How do you approach customers and making them fans, right?
Yep.
And I know Tony, Tony Robbins, talks about creating a raving fan.
Yes.
Economy.
Yeah,
Talk about Fanocracy and fans itself.
And Tony is a huge proponent of this idea of fandom. And he's been talking about, as you said, raging fans for a long time. He, in fact, wrote the foreword to Fanocracy. I'm very honored that Tony wrote the foreword. So I thank him very much for that. Here's how this idea came about. I'm a massive live music fan. I've seen 780 live music concerts in my life. I actually keep a spreadsheet, including 75 Grateful Dead concerts, my favorite band. And I co-wrote Fanocracy with my 26-year-old daughter, Reiko. And this idea came about because she was telling me how much of a Harry Potter fan she is. And I knew she was because I started her on the Harry Potter thing when she was only 6 years old. I started reading the first book to her. So she's read every book multiple times, seen every movie multiple times, gone to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Orlando several times, gone to the UK to go to the studio tour where they film the movies. But she also wrote a 90,000-word alternative ending to the Harry Potter series, where Draco Malfoy is a spy for the Order of the Phoenix, and put that on a fan fiction site, and it's been downloaded thousands of times. Wow. So we were geeking out about how much of a fan we are of the things that we love. And our hypothesis 5 years ago when we started researching was, any organization can develop fans just like Harry Potter and the Grateful Dead. And we found out that to be utterly true. And I'd like to illustrate that by asking you a question, Anthony. Do you love auto insurance?
No, I particularly do not love auto insurance.
Right. And so 100% of the people say that. Nobody loves auto insurance. But here's the thing. I was talking to McKeel Hagerty. He's the CEO of Hagerty Insurance. They do classic car auto insurance. He's an entrepreneur, built this business. I'll give you the punchline first.
Sure.
Built this business, double-digit compound growth since inception. They will grow by 200,000 customers this year. And they are the biggest classic car auto insurance company in the world.
Wow.
Here's what he said to me. He said, David, as an entrepreneur, I can't compete in the auto insurance business the way everybody else does. I can't compete on price. I don't want to drive the market down just by competing on price. I can't spend more money on advertising. I'm never going to compete with the geckos and the lizards and whatever else those TV commercials are out there. I had to do something differently. So what he did was, I'm going to develop fans. And that's exactly what he did. He focused on developing fans. Specifically, he and his team go to over 100 classic car events around the country, or actually around North America, a year, where they're meeting with people who are already fans of classic cars. And interacting with them, engaging with them. They provide valuation seminars. They provide interesting information for people. It's a really valuable thing that they're doing around this idea of being part of an existing community of classic car lovers. They have a YouTube channel with 1 million followers. They have 650,000 members of their Hagerty Drivers Club, and they're hugely successful. Now, what's really interesting about this is it's not active selling. They're not like on the phone cold calling classic car owners. Classic car owners see them as a part of the fandom community that they're a part of, because they're there on site. They're meeting with people. So when people think, oh, I need to get some insurance, they naturally think Hagerty. And then I own a 1973 Land Rover. That's how I found out about them. And yeah, it's awesome. And Hagerty has been insuring it since 2005. And every time I re-up my insurance every year, I love it actually. I love re-upping because I like Hagerty. So this idea of fandom as a way to grow business, as a way for entrepreneurs like McKeel Hagerty, is really powerful. And what he said to me was, David, I didn't have to invent the passion for classic cars. All I had to do was tap into it.
I think and it's important because, we talk a lot about, and especially on a show like this, we talk about passion, purpose, and why. And those three kind of marry together. And I think the why for Hagerty is they're going where the fans are. I try to, when I'm speaking with my coaching clients, David, I always say, listen, if you're a football player, stop hanging out where the tennis players are. Right? Go where the fans are. Right?
Yes.
And I think
that's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Yeah. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about, and I
Sure.
did take a note here, and sort of my question was, how does the Grateful Dead and Harry Potter play a part in Fanocracy? So I wanted to ask you that question. But before you ask that question, what do you say to the entrepreneur that is just building their business today, that's really looking to, as you say, not spend money on advertising, but really kind of build a fandom mentality and going after your fans? And what do you say to that young entrepreneur? Because there's a lot of them out there that are trying to figure it all out.
Sure there are. And I advise a whole bunch of them. I mean, at Tony Robbins Business Mastery, I have an online program that I sell, and I've had over 1,000 people go through that program. So I know, I get it. I totally get it. So we looked at we looked at a bunch of different prescriptions for how people can tap into Fanocracy and create a fandom culture in their company that helps to grow business. And we found 10 different things that are outlined in the book. But I want to share you the one that I think is the most powerful and the one that to me was the most surprising. Sure. So my daughter, Reiko, my co-author, not only a Harry Potter fan, but she's a perfect co-author because obviously different gender. She's obviously different generation. She's my daughter. My wife is Japanese, so my daughter is mixed race. And she's a neuroscientist. She did a neuroscience degree at Columbia University. She's now in her final year of medical school. She'll be an emergency room doctor next year.
Congrats.
And oh, thank you. So one of the things that we looked at, we were both fascinated by, is what's going on in our brains when we become a fan of something. Specifically, what's happening? Here's what's happening. We spoke with a bunch of neuroscientists to do the research on this. What's happening is all humans are hardwired as a survival technique. It's embedded in us. We can't help it to want to be part of a tribe. We want to be part of a tribe because that's where we feel safe and comfortable, and that's where the most powerful emotional connections happen. So we actually spoke with some neuroscientists who told us about this idea of proximity. Proximity, there's 3 different important levels of proximity. Further than about 12 feet is called public space. Right. Our brains do not track people in our public space. We know they're there, but we don't naturally track them. Once they get into about 12 feet from us, we can't help ourselves. We begin to track them because we want to know, are they part of our tribe or are they a potential enemy? And then inside of 4 feet is called personal space. That's where the strongest emotional connections happen. That's cocktail party distance. So this explains why when you walk into a room, you can't help it, but you scan the room to see who you know. And then you naturally gravitate to people you know because they're part of your tribe. Right. And then if you get into a crowded elevator or crowded subway, people you don't know, you feel nervous. You can't help the fact that you feel a little bit nervous. That's hardwired. So here's what this means for young entrepreneurs. How can you get in close physical proximity with your existing and potential customers? I mean, it's as simple as Sales 101, meet them in their office, right? Or take them to coffee or take them to lunch. But it also might mean, can you create an event for your company? Can you create an event where you bring people together? Because then they're not only in close physical proximity with you, but they're also in close physical proximity with each other, customers with other customers.
So fans create other fans.
Correct.
Wow. Yeah.
Really, really powerful stuff. Now, what's fascinating to me this is rooted in neuroscience. Now, I've been on the advisory board of a company called HubSpot since the very beginning. HubSpot was founded in 2006 by Brian Halligan. He's now one of my closest friends. I've been his advisor since 2007.
Great platform, by the way.
Great platform. As an entrepreneur, Brian started this business. I joined before he had any customers, 0 customers. Brian has been focused on this idea of fandom from the very beginning. And I've been a part of it and I've seen it in action. He's grown his business to $650 million in revenue. It's roughly a $7 billion market cap.
It's amazing.
Fabulously successful. And he's built it on this idea of fandom. So let me share 2 things that Brian and HubSpot do that are actually parts of the book, which are fascinating. The first one is another neuroscience concept called mirror neurons. The idea of mirror neurons, it's a part of your brain that fires when you see or hear somebody do something as if you're doing it yourself. I'm going to demonstrate it, Anthony. So Anthony and I are able to see one another because we're on a camera, but if you're listening in, you can also participate in what I'm going to do. I'm holding up a lemon and a slice of lemon right now. If I take a bite of this lemon, it's incredibly powerful. My brain fires. I'm going to do that right now. Wow, my brain is firing. My eyes close, my mouth puckers up. It's a really powerful sensation on my tongue. My saliva glands are doing their thing. I mean, biting in a lemon is powerful.
Sure.
My brain is firing, but your brain is firing too.
I'm squinting.
Right, just by watching me. And people even just listening without seeing that on the video,
right.
you might be tasting a bit of lemon.
For those of you that are listening on the podcast, you're listening on the replay, I want to hear your comments. I want you to send me notes. This is fantastic. It's visceral, David.
It's interesting, right?
I'm actually, I feel it.
It's fascinating. And this is the power of mirror neurons. And so here's what this means for young entrepreneurs. Here's what it means for anybody listening in. Here's what HubSpot did using this technique. So the mirror neurons, neuroscience tells us, is when you see something happen and you feel as if you're doing it yourself. So if you use video and photographs cropped as if you're in the personal space of people, our brains tell us, our subconscious brains tell us that we're actually in the same room, even though we're not. You know intellectually that you're not in the same room as someone who's on the other end of a video camera, but your brain tells you that you are. So you can use this idea in your marketing, in your social networking, and on your website, and in your offline marketing materials by having as much real photographs and video of people, your customers, partners, cropped as if you're in a personal space within 4 feet and looking directly at the camera. And HubSpot does this brilliantly well. You look at their social networks, they have tons of photographs and videos. They have HubSpot Academy, where they actually have a course that they have courses that they create for people.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of HubSpot. I mean, I think when I do some of my coaching work and my some of my my leadership work, I always refer to HubSpot as sort of being the go-to, and I'm a really, really big fan of it.
Amazing, right? So that's. I mean, you asked. I know I talked for a long time.
No, this is great, David.
On a simple question. The simple question was, how can a young entrepreneur take these ideas? But this is something we all can do, and it's something we all can do right now. And from the sales perspective, asking people to jump on a Zoom or a similar kind of video conference can sometimes work better than just simply doing a telephone call. So
I agree. It's got to be connected. And I just a couple of things. I know we're kind of coming around to the last part of our podcast. Again, on the podcast, everyone is David MEERMAN Scott, author, speaker, Fanocracy. I'm a big fan. I've been a big follower of David for
so kind of you, Anthony. I'm so really honored that you would say
a couple of things I just wanted to wrap up before we end is
sure.
We are focusing on how to turn fans into customers and customers into fans. You got to pick up the book, Fanocracy. A couple of things I just wanted to walk through real quick, David, that I'm a big fan of.
Sure.
World-Class Marketing from Tony Robbins. If you have not, just to all the listeners and watchers, people watching the podcast, if you have not attended a Tony Robbins Business Mastery conference, you absolutely must. David is a speaker. He is on fire on stage. I've had the opportunity to see him and be in his personal space because he's just really great at what he does. But if you have not attended Tony Robbins Business Mastery, you should absolutely do that.
Yeah, they're fabulous events.
Yeah, and it's productive. It's absolutely productive. So, the world, according to David MEERMAN Scott and Tony Robbins, is always make sure you're available, respond quickly, collaborate with people, but always think of how can I help that person become a fan? What can I do to help that person become a fan through my offering?
100%. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so very much for being here, David. Listen, before we go, just to let people know where they can find you on social media platform. Make sure you get a copy of the book, Fanocracy. I know I'm looking to get another one actually, because I already have one, looking to get another one. So, David, where can people find you?
Yeah, so Fanocracy is out in hardcover and ebook, but my daughter Reiko and I read the audiobook. So those of you who are like the podcast sort of audiobook thing,
Audio fan.
that's
Audio
one
fan.
way to do it. We have a website at www.fanocracy.com. Lots of information there. There's a graphic around the idea of proximity that I just talked about that you can download for free. We have some PDFs on there. We have some videos on there. On social networks, I'm DM Scott.
Great. Once again, everybody, this is the Anthony Conklin Show, and I'm so glad you're here helping entrepreneurs connect their passion, purpose, and why. We've been on the air with the one, the only. I'm a big fan, David MEERMAN Scott, marketing and sales expert. David, thank you so very much. We'll see you next time.
Anthony, I really, really appreciate you having me on. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.